Today we're trying out a $25,000 simulator to see if I can increase my driving skill before I go to Germany and Belgium to drive at the Nurburgring and at Spa. We're in Arizona at Sim Racing Addicts, and Bob is nice enough to rent this out to us for a couple hours so we can give this a shot. This is Bob. He's the owner of Sim Racing Addicts. He's the guy who designed and built this whole rig and who's gracious enough to come and let us rent it today. Bob, can you tell us, people who don't know that much about sim racing, or who do, what have you built and why is this more realistic than, my PlayStation?
So I did a lot of research on the setup before I went and built it. The heart of the system starts with the PC, custom-built PC, and very high-end graphic card. That's key to getting the visual experience that you want. Below the PC, in the rack, is the haptic feedback system. The car is set up, you need to feel the rumble, you need to feel when there's contact with other cars. Okay, so
hopefully not too much.
Yeah, hopefully not too much, but it does happen. And when you're on the curbs,
right,
it's really important to feel what the car is doing when you're in the curbs. So this is set up with 6 amplifiers of 100 watts each that are driving basically have tactile feedback, which are basically subwoofers without the voice coil, without the speaker cone.
Right.
That's shaking the rig. There's 4, 1 in each corner of the car, and 1 under the seat and 1 under the pedals, and that's driven by software from Sim Experience called Sim Hub, which takes the telemetry and drives the haptic feedback, which is a key part of the experience.
Oh yeah. All right, I'm all set up to drive on the Nurburgring for the first time. This is going to be pretty intense because there's a lot of elevation game. This is a full motion racing sim, and so it's going to jerk me around a lot. So let's see how it goes. You've got so many knobs, Bob. Bob's knobs. Wow, that brake pedal requires some force, huh?
Without taking apart the pedal, okay? And putting different compression.
Yeah. That elevation is so wild. You go up a hill, you feel it tilt you back. I've crashed on that corner every time. Hopefully not in real life.
When you move over to the simulator itself, the chassis is a SimLab chassis based on 80/20, and then I've gone and custom modified it there to kind of get the setup that I really wanted. So what's the simulator? What are the key components in the simulator? Starting with the force feedback wheel, key. This is fundamental to experiencing sim racing correctly and to feel the forces of the car that are being exerted on it. I went with the AccuForce Pro 2 force feedback wheel. This thing is pretty intense. On Formula 1 settings, it can break your wrist if you leave your hands on the wheel.
And I realized I forgot to let go whenever I crashed. I broke the one rule that we were supposed to do, and I held on. So
yeah, so force feedback is cool. It's upgraded with magnetic, neodymium magnetic shifters to really get that feel of the shifters instead of the spring-loaded shifters. Cuts down on misshifts and really gives you that tactile feedback that you experience in a race car. It's also complemented with, I hope I say this right, Huskenveld Sprint Series pedals. It's a load cell pedal, about as close as you can get to realistic without going to a full hydraulic setup. It's complemented with a digital dash over here that you can run to get all your information and customize. This is driven by Sim Hub, and you can fully program what information you want on the dash, the configuration. I used one that I liked and made a few mods to it.
Yeah. All right, done with the Nordschleife for now. Let's load up Spa and go to Belgium and turn some laps here and see what this 240i can do. Oh, Rouge. I don't know what to do with that corner in real life. That's terrifying. Understeer, cold tires, death, fireballs, a bright white light. Where are my braking points here? 200, brake at the 150. See how that feels. Oh, we got time. I could probably brake at the 100.
I brake right when the curbing starts.
Curbing starts. Yeah, I didn't even see the curbing. Okay. I'll probably brake at the 100 next time and see where that is, and keep my eye out for the curbing. Oh yeah, this is my least favorite corner on PlayStation. Just keeps going. It's like the latest late Apex. And this requires so much courage in real life. Like, can you imagine death, instant death, but you know, you're still gonna be going 100, 110.
59-inch curved screen. I needed to have a compact setup instead of going with the 3 screens.
Yeah.
I also really enjoy the not having the breakup between the screens.
Right,
I think
no
it's
bezels,
I
right?
think it's no bezels. I think it's more immersive. So high-end pedals, and then we got 2 analogs, sequential shifter here if you're driving a car with sequential shifting, and a brake pedal if you want to do a rally setup and things like that. Complemented with also OMP's WRC-R racing seat, and that's pretty much the setup. Probably a few more things. I got some custom fans on here because I think, as you guys know today, you can get warm driving in these things.
Yeah, I cranked them up because it's some work. Like you're physically involved so much more than a stationary game setup or than something else, because the force feedback requires enough of your arms that you're really working. And then the pedal, I mean, that's the first thing I said was, I'm shocked that the pedal is so difficult to push, which is fairly realistic in a serious car. And all that ends up being pretty darn physical, especially if you were doing like a longer race. I mean, we kind of farted around with some quick races, but if you did a 30, 40-minute stint, I mean, you get hot.
You get hot, yeah.
So what's the main difference between something like this and something as simple as a console? I was just driving on Gran Turismo 7 last night, doing these same exact tracks, and it's hard to explain how much different 2 video games can be, because whenever I'm driving this, I'm not actually thinking about any of the mechanics of being in a game whatsoever, where in a PlayStation or something else, or maybe a simpler sim, you're sitting there trying to think about how can I manipulate this object to make it do what I want to do on the track. When I'm here, I'm really just thinking about driving, because it's close enough to real life. I'm getting enough feedback through my butt and through my hands and everywhere to where I'm thinking about driving mechanics. I'm not thinking about racing whatsoever. So can I say definitively this is going to make me a much better driver? I don't know. I don't have a way to measure that, at least yet. We'll see when I come back from the Nordschleife and from Spa. But for now, I can say this is much more like driving than it is a game.
And I forgot one of the most important parts of the setup is the motion component.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
Which, you know, I didn't go with full hydraulics, which you can do, but I needed to stay in a fairly compact footprint. So I went with Next Level Racing's motion platform. I think it's an incredible platform that makes the experience that much more realistic.
Yeah.
You can feel the brake surge, you can feel the elevation changes,
Oh, yeah.
and most importantly, you can feel the slip of the car.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
what's happening to the car, which is really important to be a better racer. You have to feel what the car is doing.
Yeah. I think at first it was odd because I felt like I was getting pushed around a lot. And then the more I drove, I didn't even think about it. It was just happening because it felt realistic enough that I was just there driving a car. I wasn't thinking about what is the sim rig doing and pushing me around.
That's the common reaction from what I'll call a console racer.
Yeah.
Right? You're not feeling any forces.
Yeah.
And of course, you know, I'm not going to, a full hydraulic setup, it can be more realistic because the whole rig is moving.
Yeah.
Okay? You're also into it for a bunch more money and a lot more maintenance and things like
So
that.
that's literally lifting up the pedals, the steering wheel, the screen, everything
The
is all
whole
moving?
rig is on a moving rig with,
Oh, jeez. That's like some NASA stuff.
yeah.
Wow.
And that's when you get into, and I don't want to put a price point, but when you see simulators usually between 50 and 100K, they usually have the full moving platform.
You can almost afford the car that you're driving in the sim.
But
Wow.
I just lastly, and you can, you know, I just want to thank you guys for coming out and checking it out.
Yeah.
It seems like you had a great time, and I was so happy to host you.
Yeah, it was awesome. You've got a really awesome setup down here. The man cave is next level, but also the racing sim is next level. So if you guys are in the Phoenix, Chandler area, check out Sim Racing Addicts.
Future Brendan here. Having done the trip, having done this sim racing as practice, I wanted to just give you my general takeaway on whether or not this actually helped me when it came to physically visiting Spa and the Nurburgring, because those places are epic, they are huge, they are daunting, and so was this a level of familiarity that I gained from doing this? I'd say to a minor degree, yes. The people that put on the trip basically said don't even bother with sim rigs and racing and video games because it's so far from actually being there that it's not even worth it. It may actually be a detriment because you're going to learn the wrong things. And I think to a degree they're absolutely right. I enjoyed at least having some familiarity of where the turns go, but it was like a 5% initiation of, oh yeah, I remember we turn right here, or we remember we turn left there, versus doing it in real life. But it's so overwhelming that it really didn't help as much as I kind of hoped that it would. There's so much happening at each place. Like for our track day, I'll make future videos about this, by the way, but for our track day at Spa, we're surrounded by hypercars and cup cars, and everything is worth 200 grand. And so just that alone is intimidating, let alone being in a foreign country, let alone being at Spa, one of the most iconic, historic, amazing, fast, crazy racetracks in the world. All of that on top of never having been there before, and how much driving skill do I still have left from back in the day when I did track days. All that is just so much to take on. And then at the Nurburgring, it's almost a totally different experience, because at Spa there was a high level of monitoring and standards and safety, and at the Nurburgring it's almost like a rebel gang of crazy car people who just decide to go out on this little tiny winding mountain road together and just absolutely fly. It almost felt like a game of the person who takes the biggest risks is going to go fastest today. Not the person with the fastest car or the most skill or acuity or anything like that. It's just a game of risk and chance and blind courage. And so that is not something a sim racing game can prepare you for. So I would say if you're going to go on a trip like I did and physically go to the ring or to Spa or any other racetrack, it can only help to the smallest degree to get a familiarity for where the turns are. What you really need to do is get in-seat, real-life in-car instruction and practice and time behind the wheel.